We're live.
We're live already.
Hey, welcome. I'm Angel with DataCorps Technology Solutions.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and we are here for your Monday edition of Ask DataCorps Live.
Right.
In lovely, flooding, storm-clad Tampa Bay, Florida.
Oh yeah, it's not bright and not sunshiny out there.
Nope, it's pretty much the kind of Monday that just makes you want to get back in bed and forget it's Monday.
It's actually one of those Mondays that people write memes about. Like, This Monday has been such a Monday that it's a Monday like beyond any Mondays.
The Monday of Mondays.
Yeah.
But in honor of Tropical Storm Emily, which is why it's so disgusting outside today, we wanted to talk to you about storm prep because August, traditionally in Florida, is the busiest month of hurricane season. And tomorrow is August 1st, and we have a lovely tropical storm to remind us of that today.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to talk about what to do to get yourselves ready for any kind of tropical weather system.
Absolutely. So obviously when there's a storm coming, it's a great time right before the storm to just kind of look over everything and make sure you've got, electronics off the floor. Make sure you've got your disaster plan ready.
Right. Not just every single gallon of water and loaf of bread from Publix.
Right. It's more than just batteries, water, and bread.
Right.
One of the things that we do here at DataCorps is we check backups. So we spent the whole weekend actually working on backups and making sure that backups were out of town, that were safe, and in case of the worst. Now, obviously, this isn't that big of a storm, but there's this old adage that how you do something is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. So we take every storm, even if it's far off, where we don't, there's a chance it may not hit the Tampa Bay area, but as long as that we're still within that cone of probability and whatnot, we still go through the steps because we want to make sure that we have everything in place so that when, if a storm is coming for a direct hit, we've already rehearsed it. So we take these as chances to rehearse our processes.
Absolutely.
And rehearse our procedures to make sure that we're ready for it.
Okay. So let's start, before we get into business things and the things that DataCorps is doing, what should a person do in their home?
Sure.
With their technology?
So in your home for your technology, it's a great time to take inventory. You might want to take inventory by taking a lot of pictures. So, a lot of us, we really revere these electronics, and when we walk out the door, if we have to evacuate, we're thinking about that awesome TV that we have and whatnot. So this is a great thing to take a picture of, because later on, if you have to file a claim, you've got documentation that you own that piece of equipment.
Right.
But it is a great time to take stock and make sure that you have an inventory of what you've got. It's also a great time to evaluate what needs to be running and what doesn't need to be running.
Right.
Because storms here in Florida are particularly notorious for having surges, electrical surges and whatnot. So even though you may have the world's best surge protector, I promise you God is better. So you don't really want to go up against him when it comes to your electronics. Your best bet is going to be to unplug them.
Okay. So I remember, back when I was a kid and we would talk about evacuating for major storms. My mother would always say, because it's not like a tornado, you have time to pack a few things before you go. My mother would always say, get all the photo albums and bring them with us because we can't replace the photos. And now I know that because it's 2017, most of my photos are living on my laptop.
Absolutely.
But in worst case scenario, what do I do to keep those photographs and other valuable home digital information safe?
Sure. So I'll give you a little behind the scenes. So for my own personal backups, this is not for business. This is for personal. Mm-hmm. We use CrashPlan. I think it's $150 a year. You can cover up to 10 computers with it. It'll even cover USB hard drives, and it's convenient. It runs in the back end. Now the downside is for such a cheap piece of software and service, it's going to take you 5 or 6 weeks to probably download all your stuff back.
Start now.
But again, you don't, if something crashes or you lose something, at least it's there and you know that you're, 4 or 5 weeks away from getting it all back. However, if you don't do something and you do lose the data, you're going to kick yourself in the butt for not doing something for, $150?
Right. That's crazy.
So, yeah, that's what we use personally, CrashPlan, CrashPlan.com.
Cool. I mean, I know I've had, pictures on my phone when my kids were babies and lost a phone and lost 2 or 3 months of pictures and sat in my living room and boo-hooed like the big old weenie mom that I am. So losing all of it, I can only imagine how devastating that would be when it's so easily preventable.
And you know, we've all heard the horror stories of losing, you know, irreplaceable wedding photos and whatnot.
Right.
I mean, it's sad, it happens. So, you know, just invest a little bit of money and do that. There's also Carbonite, although I'm not a big fan of theirs. I don't know what their pricing is anymore. But I liked CrashPlan because $150, 10 computers. I'll back up my mom's computer and my account and whatnot. So it's all in one place.
They have iOS apps for CrashPlan too, so you can access it on your...
so you can browse your backups and all that. They've got an app for OS X. They've got an app for Windows. So basically, pretty much, you know, every device that you've got is covered there.
Awesome.
You know, obviously, if you use Apple devices, you can use iCloud to back up to that. So that's a great backup. Time Machine, although Time Machine doesn't back up to the cloud. So if you use Time Machine to back up, make sure you take your Time Machine storage with you.
Yeah, bring it along.
Bring it.
Put it in the car.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's great. So we talked about personal data and personal devices. We want to make sure that we're taking photographs. What do we do with those photographs of our equipment once we've taken them?
Sure.
Do we send them to the insurance company? Do we just keep them on our phone?
Right. Keep them on your phone. Keep them, you know, make sure obviously they're backed up somewhere. If you know, my phone, I've got an iPhone, I've got iCloud set up on it. So every photo I take gets automatically beamed up to iCloud right when I take it. So I don't worry about that stuff. But keep it where you can access it, because if you have to file a claim, you want to get to those photos quickly.
Awesome. All right. So now that we've covered basics about our home, what do we do at work?
So at work, it's a completely different game. In business, there's an old adage that says time is money, right?
Right.
So in business, when we're looking at backup, we also want to look at the other side of it, and that's backup and recovery.
Right.
And so what we want to start with, the first place to start is a little 3-letter acronym called RTO, Recovery Time Objective. And that's the time aspect of it.
Right.
So if your business needs to be up and running right away after a disaster, your recovery time objective is going to be smaller.
Right.
If your business doesn't need to be up and running right away after a disaster, your recovery time objective is larger.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when we talked about CrashPlan for our personal use, it's no big deal if you're without your photos of your wedding or your baby's first birthday for 5 or 6 weeks, but being unable to run your business for 5 or 6 weeks could be completely deal-breaking for a lot of people. Absolutely.
So we start with that because that's what's going to dictate what technology we put in place in order to back up that data. Because the technology that we put in place, well then if you've got a short recovery time objective, that technology has to be able to bring that data back from wherever it's stored. If it's stored just off-site, we need to be able to get to that data quickly. If it's stored on-site and off-site, then the data is right there. It just needs to be re-synthesized into something that it can be used.
Okay. So what do you mean by having it just off-site or on-site and on-site?
So with clients that have a long recovery time objective, meaning they could go a couple of weeks without having their data, they just need to make sure it's secure and it's backed up. We oftentimes opt out of having a local backup.
Okay.
Mainly because of cost. There's really no need to add the additional hardware to have that local backup.
Again, local meaning in your actual office.
Correct. Something that's plugged in right to your network.
Okay.
Now, sometimes we can add that and it's not a lot of extra cost. But again, if you've got a business that's cost conscious and I'm looking at preparing a proposal for you, that's going to be one of those things where I'm going to give you the option.
Right.
You know, if you want to add it, no problem. And it's not that much more money to add, but it is something, you know, it's a little bit of an additional cost and it's somewhere we can save you money. However, if your business has that critical time sensitivity where if there is a disaster, we do need to get you up and running quickly, then we need to add a couple of different technologies. We need to add a technology called a backup and disaster recovery appliance, which is actually a server that stays on site at your office and can take on the identity of your existing servers. All right. The other technology that we apply is cloud virtualization, where we can actually take your server, spin it up in our cloud, and get you back up and running in our cloud. And that's the basically that situation is if there's physical damage to your building or anything like that, that's where we go to in that kind of an instance.
So in that case where there's physical damage to our building, let's say there's a major hurricane in the Tampa Bay area and most of the structures are damaged or destroyed, there's like major devastation that happens. Obviously, any on-site thing that we have is going to be destroyed in our office. So talk to me about where your cloud is and how you're going to keep that out of the damage zone.
Right. So we keep our cloud servers outside of the area. We've got cloud servers in Atlanta that we use for that virtualization. So that keeps us out of that zone where there would be destruction, so that we can get you back up and running quickly. Awesome. Now, obviously, you're going to be traveling. You're not going to be in the area. You don't want to be in the area during that time because, one, internet's probably not going to work. Yeah. Two, cellular's probably not going to work very well. So, you know, if you've got those two things and you're still in the area, I mean, there's not a lot I can do to restore your connectivity. I might be able to restore your environment, but I might not be able to get you connected to it because you've got no reliable way to connect back.
Okay.
So again, you want to plan for that too in your disaster recovery plan, that, you know, if you've got that criticality, you've got to plan for alternate connectivity as well.
Okay. By alternate connectivity, you mean?
Satellite or being off-site, being, you know, in another county, in another state. Okay. Some businesses can operate from another county or another state. So there's a lot of different, and here's where, you know, you really want to sit down and have a conversation, because you want to go through that drill. You want to look at, you know, how it's going to pan out, what that's going to look like before you start making any kind of plans.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So for home, our key is make sure everything's backed up. For work, our key is make sure everything's backed up. There are different ways that you go about it, but the key, I guess, right now is make sure that you start now, while our tropical storm just looks like a heavy rainstorm.
Exactly. Now's the time to do it. I'll give you a great example. Last year, I became aware of a situation. I was called in to help because a company, a local organization, was actually compromised by a virus that had encrypted most of their data, if not all of their data. And the problem was that they had just had a change in IT companies, and the IT company didn't have a local backup, which isn't terrible, except that coupled with the fact that they use a, you know, I'll call them a substandard internet provider that provides a very high download but a very slow upload speed, their backups were only 60% off-site. So they lost 40% of their data because their backups had not finished at the time that that event happened. So we take that into consideration when planning, because it may not be that we can get you backed up in 30 or 45 days for that initial backup. So those things go and they get factored into how we plan backups.
That's a great thing to look at too, because I know a lot of times that the cable providers or the internet providers, in order to make a deal that sounds great and get lots of new customers, they'll offer you this shiny deal where it's super cheap for a super fast download speed. And I mean, really, when we think about using the internet, we think about downloading. How fast can we download a movie? How fast can we download a file? How fast can we download stuff for ourselves? But we tend not to think about how quick we need to be able to upload stuff. And I'm sure that the cable providers are playing on that fact that we don't really care.
They are, and here's the thing, that goes into how I look at internet providers. So I just ignore the download, because to me the download doesn't matter. If you can't get your YouTube video fast enough, that just doesn't matter. I'm looking at how quickly I can get your data out of your building so I can protect your business.
Right.
And so that's the number, and that's the key for me. And you know, here in the Tampa Bay area, we have two big providers. And one of them has what's called symmetrical speeds. Okay. So if you get an account with them, you get an account for 75 megabits. That means 75 down and 75 up. So 75 into your building, 75 out. Okay. The other provider uses cable modems, so it goes over your cable. And they might come in and say, hey, we'll give you 100 for about $50 less a month. But what they don't tell you is that 100 in is paired with maybe 5 out.
Ouch.
Okay.
Ouch.
So the speed is so slow on the outbound that, yeah, you're fine. You're browsing. Everything's working great. But we can't get your data out of your building quickly enough. So then we have to, you know, it might take us a month, 2 months to do a full, complete offsite backup of your system. So that's why we want to take all of that into account into the picture. Because a business like that, absolutely critical that we have a local backup.
Okay.
Because what can happen is, and this is what happened with that organization. If you're using only cloud backup for a business like that, it kind of tends to log jam. So all that data that you're creating, say on Monday, we don't get it out and backed up until maybe Monday 5 weeks later.
Ouch.
And then Tuesday, now we're Tuesday 5 weeks later.
Right.
So you just keep creating a backlog of getting that data backed up. If you have local backup, then we can be backing up locally, and then every day our system will just try to trickle it out. And eventually, because of compression and just all sorts of other cool stuff that we can do in the background, eventually it catches up quickly where it starts like understanding, you know, I've already sent that data out, I don't need to send it twice, or I might only send changes. So we use a lot of technologies to help that process along.
Okay.
But it requires that local backup to have that frame of reference for our system to be able to balance that out.
Okay. So I like to leave our viewers with a quick 5-minute homework when we get to the end of the episodes. And I think today your homework, in honor of storm season, in honor of Tropical Storm Emily, who is our rehearsal storm for the year, right now the thing that you need to do and take action on today is, 1, look at your backup service. Make sure you have a backup service and see if you are in fact fully backed up, both at home and at your job. And 2, look at your internet service provider and see how fast your upload speed is to see if that's the thing that's holding you back. Homework for the day.
That's
Sound
perfect.
good?
That sounds awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you around. Have a great week.